A midnight silence falls over the Valley of the Kings. In the distance, a lone torch flickers against the massive stone gateway of a royal tomb. The air is heavy with incense and destiny. Within the burial chamber, priests in leopard skin cloaks chant ancient words as they prepare the body of a fallen pharaoh. Shadows dance on painted walls depicting sun gods and sacred symbols. Thud. The final stone door is slid into place, sealing the king in darkness. Yet this is not an end, but a beginning. For the ancient Egyptians, death was a threshold, one their divine rulers refused to cross without a plan. They believed with unshakable conviction that through secret rites and forbidden knowledge, a pharaoh could defy death itself and secure eternal life beyond the grave. Beneath the weight of the pyramid and millennia of sand, an extraordinary drama is unfolding in silence. The pharaoh's soul, they believed, would soon embark on a perilous journey through the afterlife, armed with spells and protected by rituals that had been enacted with meticulous care. In life, he was a god king. In death, he intended to remain a god. This is the story of how Egypt's rulers sought to outwit the inevitable, a saga of preservation, magic, and faith. Through funerary trials, both tangible and mystical, the pharaohs of old prepared to cheat death, and, in their own way, to live forever. A pharaoh's obsession with eternity. Ancient Egypt was a civilization fixated on eternity. To the Egyptians, life on Earth was just one chapter of a much longer story. The next chapter, life after death, could last forever, but only if one's passage was secured through proper rites. For a pharaoh, the stakes could not be higher. He was not only a man, but a living Horus, destined to become a god upon death. The pharaoh's eternal life was tied to the cosmic order of Egypt. If he could transcend death, prosperity and harmony would be assured for his land. So from the moment a king took the throne, and sometimes long before, immense resources and ingenuity were devoted to preparing for the inevitable day when he would draw his last breath. Think of the paradox. Here was the most powerful man in the known world, able to command armies and build monuments, yet even he could not escape mortality. How to resolve this? The answer? Rituals. Every ritual, every hieroglyph carved into a sarcophagus was a piece of a grand puzzle to conquer death. The Egyptians developed an elaborate set of funerary practices they deemed necessary to ensure immortality after death, including embalming the body, casting potent magic spells, and surrounding the deceased with all the goods and charms thought needed in the next world. These weren't mere customs. They were acts of defiance against nature's law. To the ancient mind, dying was not the end of the pharaoh's duty. In fact, it was when his true duty began, to undergo the trials that would transform him from a mortal king to an eternal deity. The Egyptians believed that upon death, their king became a divine being who could intercede for them from beyond. The survival of the pharaoh's soul was not just his personal concern, but a matter of cosmic importance. If the king lived on, so too would Ma'at, the divine order. Thus, no effort was spared to stack the deck in the pharaoh's favor against the great enemy, death. But ensuring eternal life was no simple task. It required mastering secrets of the body and soul, enlisting the gods' aid, and even tricking supernatural judges. Over the centuries, these royal funerary trials evolved. Some practices were so extreme or sacred that they were kept hidden, perhaps even forbidden to speak of to the uninitiated. From preserving a corpse against decay to navigating a labyrinth of demons, each step on the pharaoh's road to eternity was a trial to be overcome. Let us walk that road step by step and witness the lengths to which a pharaoh would go to tip the scales of fate. The mummy and the eternal body. In a torch-lit tent by the Nile, the body of the dead pharaoh is laid out for the first trial: preservation. To live forever, his physical form had to withstand the ages. The Egyptians believed the soul needed a sound body to return to, a vessel for the Ka and Ba, spiritual aspects, to reunite and live again. Thus began the sacred art of mummification, a process as delicate as surgery and as ritualized as a prayer. On a stone table, embalmers gather their tools: bronze hooks, obsidian blades, linen wrappings, natron salts. The first cut is made with solemn precision. In order to forestall decay, the body is systematically emptied of the very organs that make life possible. Through a small incision in the flank, the embalmers carefully remove the lungs, stomach, liver, and intestines, organs prone to rapid rot. Each organ is washed, perfumed, and sealed in its own canopic jar, whose lids are carved as the heads of protective deities known as the four sons of Horus. One jar is topped with a human-headed figure, Imseti, guarding the liver. Another with a baboon-headed Hapi for the lungs. A jackal-headed Duamutef protects the stomach. A falcon-headed Kebesenuef secures the intestines. By entrusting these vital pieces of the self to divine guardians, the Egyptians hoped the organs would be magically rejoined with the body when it was time to rise and walk in the field of reeds once more. Most shocking to modern sensibilities, the embalmers next turned their attention to the pharaoh's head. They did not value the brain. To them, thoughts and identity lived in the heart. So the brain was expendable. A long hook is slipped up the nostril and hammered through the thin bone at the skull's base into the cranium. With deft motions, they churn the brain to a semi-liquid and draw it out in pieces through the nose. What cannot be fished out with the hook is dissolved with concoctions of cedar oil and resins, then drained away. It is a grim task, but done with reverence. Only by removing the brain and internal organs can the body be dehydrated enough to halt decomposition. The embalmers dispose of the brain matter without ceremony, a hint of the Egyptians' belief that it was the heart, not the brain, that harbored a person's mind and soul. Now begins a 40-day vigil of drying. The cadaver is covered in piles of natron salt, found in Egypt's deserts, to draw out every drop of moisture. Each day, priests utter spells and prayers as the salt does its work. Slowly, the pharaoh's flesh darkens and hardens, the essence of life leaving it. After weeks, what remains is a withered yet durable form. Skin, hair, and muscles preserved, no longer soft tissue, but artifact. This was critical, for if the body decayed away, the soul would be left homeless, a fate too terrible to imagine. In order to live for all eternity and stand before Osiris, the body of the deceased had to be preserved by mummification, as one modern summary of Egyptian belief notes. Once dried, the body is lovingly anointed with oils and resins. The head, hands, and feet are given extra padding and wrappings to maintain the pharaoh's recognizable form. Sometimes the skin is painted with a golden resin, a literal layer of gold or golden hue painted onto the flesh. Why gold? Because the Egyptians believed the gods had flesh of gold, incorruptible, precious, shining like the sun. By gilding the pharaoh's body, they symbolically merged him with the divine, protecting against decay and asserting that he was now one of the imperishable gods. Each fingertip is wrapped separately, each toe bound in clean strips of linen, while a priest murmurs incantations and burns incense made of myrrh and frankincense. Within the layers of bandages, they tuck amulets, small charms in the shapes of scarabs, ankhs, jed pillars, each placed at strategic points to guard the king's limbs and guide his spirit. Tiny eyes of Horus are placed over wounds or vulnerable spots, and a resin-coated funerary mask, perhaps even one of beaten gold like Tutankhamun's famous visage, is fitted over the dried, shrunken face. By the end of this ritual, the lifeless body has been transformed. No longer a corpse, but a mummy, an eternal body intentionally crafted to last for millennia. After as long as 70 days of careful work, the pharaoh's body is ready. In the Egyptians' eyes, he is now a sahu, a revered form ready to house the spirit again. All the while, the priests have treated the body as if it were sacred, often referring to the deceased as Osiris, followed by the pharaoh's name. Indeed, they believed the king in death became Osiris, the god who once died and was resurrected as lord of the underworld. The careful preservation of the body was the first trial, and they have passed it. The pharaoh's physical being will not decay into nothingness. It lies intact, swathed in linen, awaiting the reunion of soul and flesh on the other side of death's veil. But the trials of the afterlife involve far more than just keeping a body intact. The soul's journey is about to begin, and it will demand every advantage their rituals can provide. The sealed tomb and its secrets. We step now into the blistering sun, where the pharaoh's funeral procession winds slowly toward his tomb. A gilded funerary bark carrying the coffin is pulled by teams of oxen. Behind, a train of mourners follows, priests and family wailing and chanting. They approach a grand monument, perhaps a sky-piercing pyramid of gleaming white limestone, or a hidden rock-cut tomb in a desert valley. Whichever form it takes, this tomb is much more than a grave. It is a launch pad for eternity, a machine designed to assist the king's soul in cheating death. As the mummy arrives at the entrance, the final rituals on earth commence. In a poignant ceremony known as the opening of the mouth, a priest takes a special adze, a ritual blade, and touches it to the mummy's mouth and eyes. With each touch, he speaks spells awakening the senses of the deceased. By this rite, the Egyptians believed, the dead king's spirit would be able to see, hear, breathe, and speak once again in the afterlife. The head of the mummy is gently turned to face south as prayers are intoned. The symbolism is powerful. The pharaoh must be able to open his mouth to breathe the air of the next world, to receive offerings, and, importantly, to defend himself in the trials to come. With the sacred blade and magic words, the priest declares the pharaoh restored, not to life here, but to the potential of life in the realm beyond. As incense smoke curls in the dry air, attendants place the last offerings at the tomb's threshold. Baskets of bread and fruit, jars of beer and wine, bouquets of lotus flowers, all the little comforts of life to carry with him. The deep voice of a lector priest recites the final spells, and the heavy stone door slides into place, sealing the king inside his house of eternity. Inside that tomb lies a treasure trove of secret knowledge and sacred objects, amassed precisely to aid the pharaoh in cheating death. The walls are not blank stone. They are inscribed from floor to ceiling with hieroglyphic texts and vivid images. In the earliest pyramids of the Old Kingdom, these were the mysterious pyramid texts, a collection of spells and invocations reserved solely for the monarch's use. In fact, during those ancient times, only the pharaoh could have such powerful texts, carved literally around his corpse to ensure his resurrection. Pharaoh Unas, around 2400 BCE, was the first to have these spells chiseled into his pyramid's interior walls, providing him with a personal handbook to eternity. The pyramid texts spoke words of power. They would help the dead king reassemble his body, fly up to the heavens, and join the sun among the imperishable stars. One spell might command, "O Ho Unas, you have not gone away dead, you have gone away alive." Another invokes the sky goddess to lift the king up. These were forbidden secrets in a sense, hidden in dark chambers far from the eyes of the living, meant only for them, king and the gods. As time went on, more Egyptians gained access to funerary texts. The pyramid texts evolved into coffin texts, and later the famous Book of the Dead. But the principle remained. Knowledge was power in the afterlife. The tomb's decorations and contents were all carefully chosen to give the pharaoh an edge. Scenes on the walls show him triumphing over dangers, embracing gods, and enjoying an idealized life in paradise, reinforcing the reality they wanted to manifest. Small statues of servants and artisans, called ushabti or shabti, were arrayed in boxes or niches. Each shabti figurine is inscribed with a spell and held a tiny tool. If called upon in the afterlife, these figures would spring to life and do any menial work required so that the king himself would not be burdened. Why worry about finding food or tilling fields in the next world when clay servants can do it for you? With hundreds of shabti, some pharaohs were buried with over 400 of them. The king ensured he could live like a king beyond death, waited on hand and foot. The practice of providing shabti had a dark origin. In the very early dynasties of Egypt, the pharaoh's tomb was sometimes accompanied by the burials of his servants and courtiers, sacrificed or compelled to die and follow him into the next life. Archaeological digs have found graves of dozens of young attendants around the tombs of the first pharaohs, suggesting they drank poison or were ritually killed when the king died. A somber retinue to serve their lord in eternity. This practice was mercifully short-lived. By the end of the Old Kingdom, the Egyptians had deemed it more fitting, and less horrific, to use statues instead of real people. Thus, the figurines replaced human victims. Still, the impulse reveals just how far the Egyptians were willing to go. Even other human lives could be marshaled as assets in the pharaoh's quest to defeat death. What was once a literal blood sacrifice turned into a symbolic army of terracotta and wood, painted in bright hues, ready to serve at a magic word. No tomb would be complete without a curse or two. At least, that's how the legend goes. In reality, the ancient Egyptians did sometimes inscribe warnings at the entrance of tombs, especially in later periods, to ward off looters. Imagine peering into a dusty tomb corridor by flickering lamplight and seeing a stark hieroglyphic message on the wall, essentially saying, "Anyone who violates this resting place will be punished by the gods." In one example, an inscription in a New Kingdom tomb threatened that the Council of Gods would unleash their wrath on any who disturbed the king's peace, even invoking gruesome fates, being eaten by crocodiles or lions or snakes. These were not idle words. To the Egyptians, the desecration of a tomb was not just theft, it was an assault on the divine order and the afterlife itself. A pharaoh's tomb was sacrosanct, a sealed realm meant never to be opened once the burial was complete. The living were forbidden to intrude. Thus, curses served as supernatural guardians, reinforcing the physical seals and traps, if any, that protected the burial. The irony, of course, is that almost every tomb was eventually robbed or opened by someone, sometimes as soon as a few years after burial, sometimes thousands of years later, by archaeologists. But in the story the Egyptians told themselves, the tomb would remain inviolate, the pharaoh undisturbed, as he underwent the next trials beyond its walls. And so the tomb is stocked and sealed. The body is preserved and empowered. The priests withdraw, leaving behind a profound stillness. Inside, only the faint smell of incense and the glint of oil lamps, snuffed as they left, remain. The pharaoh now lies alone in the dark, surrounded by stone, gold, and silence. Yet his journey has only just begun. Beyond the sealed door lies the great unknown, the Duat, the underworld. In that realm of shadows, the king's spirit must face a series of ordeals more harrowing than any faced in life. Thanks to the preparations, he carries many advantages: a preserved body, spells and knowledge, protective amulets. But ultimately, it will be up to his own soul to brave the gauntlet of the afterlife. Let us follow as the ancient texts guide us into the night where Ra, the sun god, and the souls of the dead travel, seeking the dawn of rebirth. Trials in the underworld, the journey of the night. Total darkness. Then, a spark, the light of the setting sun as it slips below the horizon. In Egyptian belief, when the sun god Ra set each evening, he did not cease to shine. Instead, he entered the underworld, Duat, to travel through it over the course of the night. And on this night, the soul of the deceased pharaoh joins Ra's entourage on the divine solar bark, boat. This is the next trial, a dangerous voyage through a cosmic realm populated by gods, monsters, and gates. To be successful, the pharaoh must make it through all 12 hours of the night, emerging with the sun at dawn, a symbolic rebirth for both Ra and the king. We find ourselves on the sunboat alongside the radiant deity and the ghostly form of the king. The river of the underworld stretches ahead, winding through caverns of complete blackness. Almost immediately, a towering figure rears up in the boat's path, a giant serpent, its coils blocking the waterway. It is Apophis, the chaos serpent, eternal enemy of Ra. Apophis seeks to devour the sun and prevent the new dawn, plunging creation into darkness forever. Every single night, Ra and his helpers battle this monstrosity. The pharaoh's soul, if he is to live again, must lend his strength to this fight. Armed with spells from his tomb, perhaps recitations etched in his coffin, the king hurls imprecations at Apophis. A spear of light thrown by Ra, or perhaps a magic knife wielded by Set, Ra's defender in some versions, strikes the serpent. After a titanic struggle, Apophis is subdued, sliced into segments or chained, and the boat passes onward. This victory is crucial. It demonstrates the pharaoh's first success in the Duat, helping to maintain Ma'at, cosmic order, by defeating chaos. But many more challenges lie ahead. As the hours of night progress, the boat bearing Ra and the pharaoh's soul approaches a series of gates. According to the Book of Gates, an ancient funerary text often painted in the tombs of New Kingdom pharaohs, the underworld is partitioned into 12 sections, each separated by a gate. At each gate stands a fearsome guardian, often a serpent or a hybrid creature, along with a goddess who names the gate. The dead cannot pass unless they know the names of these guardians and the correct words to speak. This is where the secret knowledge buried with the pharaoh becomes as valuable as any weapon. He must recall the formulas inscribed in the scrolls or on the tomb walls, the passwords of the soul. One gate might be flanked by jets of fire, with a cobra rearing up to bar the way. The pharaoh steps forward, in spiritual form, and addresses the serpent by its hidden name, a name he learned from the spells. The serpent recoils, recognizing the authority of one who has been properly initiated. The massive door creaks open, and the boat continues to the next region. Hour by hour, gate after gate, the journey continues. Underworld is depicted as both a river journey and a passage through halls or caverns. In some scenes, gods of each hour greet the sun and the king. In others, enemies of the cosmic order are shown bound and decapitated as the triumphant procession moves forward. There are strange sights, lakes of boiling fire where the damned suffer, their bodies upside down and burning, a fate explicitly awaiting those who failed the trials. The king sees these torments, but is protected from them by his knowledge and virtue. The text of the Book of Gates assures that while some souls will indeed be consigned to agony in flames, some people will pass through unharmed. Our pharaoh, naturally, intends to be among the unharmed. He clings to the sun god's presence, literally following in the wake of Ra's strength. During the 5th hour, they pass by a mysterious island where the head of Osiris, the god who presides over the dead, is said to rest. In the 7th hour, another mighty serpent, also sometimes called Apophis or just another great enemy, tries once more to overturn the solar bark, but is again repelled by spells and stabbing spears of light. All of these scenes were vividly illustrated on the tomb walls of pharaohs like Seti I and Ramses VI, giving them a kind of cheat sheet to visualize and thus actualize their safe passage. If you could look around the dark burial chamber of Seti I, you would see the finely painted figures of gods and demons, each labeled with names and texts from the Book of Gates and the Book of Amduat, another guidebook of the underworld. These were instruction manuals and protective charms combined, art as a tool for immortality. Finally comes the 12th hour of the night. The boat approaches the last gate, behind which lies the eastern horizon, the exit from the Duat. Here, the sun god Ra undergoes a miraculous transformation. He is swallowed by a celestial serpent only to be reborn, emerging as Khepri, the young sun, often depicted as a scarab beetle pushing the morning sun disk. In these final moments, the pharaoh's soul also stands at a threshold of rebirth. The texts imply that if he has come this far, he has proven himself worthy. He will emerge with the dawn, following Ra to be reborn into a new day. With the last gate open, a burst of light pierces the darkness. The boat is carried upward on the primeval waters, and Ra ascends into the sky once more, bringing daylight to the world. And with him rises the pharaoh's soul, victorious in the journey of night. Yet one great trial still remains, perhaps the greatest of all. It is not enough to survive the dangers of the Duat's geography. The pharaoh must now survive judgment. He must prove that he is morally worthy of eternal life, for even a king cannot escape the scales of justice that the gods wield. The Hall of Judgment, weighing the heart. Dawn breaks in the mortal world, but the pharaoh's soul finds itself not yet in paradise. Instead, he stands in the Hall of Two Truths, the grand courtroom of the afterlife. This is the setting for the final trial, the weighing of the heart. In Egyptian belief, every person's heart carried the record of their deeds, the weight of their conscience. Now, the deceased king must answer for his life. No riches or magic can directly sway this verdict, at least not without clever preparation. It is here that pharaohs hoped all their piety and rule would show them to be worthy. But just in case, they had one last trick up their sleeve. Picture the scene painted on a papyrus of the Book of the Dead. Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming and guardian of the dead, leads the king by the hand into a pillared hall. Before them stands a great scale. On one side of the scale is a small heap of downy feathers, the feather of Ma'at, symbol of truth and cosmic balance. On the other side, Anubis places the pharaoh's heart, contained in a jar or wrapped amulet, glowing with the aura of all the deeds, good or bad, that the man committed in life. Watching with keen interest is a fearsome creature crouched nearby, Amit, the devourer. Amit has the head of a crocodile, the forequarters of a lion, and the rear of a hippopotamus, a composite of the most dangerous beasts known. If the scale tips, if the heart is found heavier than the feather, weighed down by lies, injustice, cruelty, or impure intentions, Amit will spring forward and snatch up the heart in her gaping jaws. In one gulp, she will destroy it forever, and with it, the pharaoh's hope of immortality. To the Egyptians, failing this judgment meant a second death, not a transition to another realm, but total oblivion. Even the kings, exalted as they were, feared this terrible fate, to be denied entry into the afterlife and cease to exist entirely. However, if the heart balances evenly with the feather, or is lighter, meaning the soul is pure and true, then the pharaoh is declared righteous, often termed ma-keru, meaning true of voice or justified. In our scene, as the scales stabilize, Anubis carefully measures. The tension is immense. Even in the artistic depictions, one can almost feel the universe holding its breath. Nearby, officiating this trial, sits Osiris on his throne, depicted as a mummified king with green skin and the tall white Atef crown. Osiris, himself once a king who died and was resurrected, presides over this court of the dead. 42 lesser gods, the assessors of Ma'at, stand as a jury around the hall's edges, each representing a province of Egypt, and each ready to hear the deceased's declarations. Now the pharaoh must speak. This is the moment of the negative confession, a remarkable ritual testimony where the deceased asserts his innocence of various sins. Instead of listing misdeeds, he proclaims, one by one, all the wrongs he did not do. I have not stolen. I have not killed. I have not told lies. I have not caused pain, and so forth. A litany of purity. In the text, there are 42 such statements addressing the ethical expectations of Egyptian society and religion. As the pharaoh recites, Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and writing, stands by with a scribal palette, ready to record the outcome. The gods listen, and the feather still rests against the heart on the scale. It might seem the king is entirely on his own here, naked before divine justice. But recall that trick up the sleeve. The Egyptians were nothing if not practical about their magic. They believed in the judgment, yes, but they also prepared for the possibility of failure. Enter the heart scarab. Among the many amulets wrapped within the mummy's layers, one of the most important is a scarab-shaped amulet placed over the heart. On its flat underside is engraved a spell, Chapter 30b from the Book of the Dead. This spell is essentially a plea or command to the heart itself, beseeching it not to betray its owner in the Hall of Judgment. In essence, it's an attempt to cheat the scales by silencing guilt. One translated line of this spell reads, "O my heart which I had upon earth, do not rise up against me as a witness in the presence of the Lord of things. Do not speak against me concerning what I have done." The pharaoh, who certainly had committed some kind of wrongdoing in life, who hasn't, is imploring his own heart to keep his secrets. What a poignant and audacious idea, to ask one's conscience to stay quiet. The heart scarab amulet was the failsafe, a means to ensure a favorable weighing even if the king's virtue alone might not suffice. Many heart scarabs have been found by archaeologists bearing exactly these carved words. The Egyptians weren't leaving anything to chance. Even in the ultimate moral test, they introduced a bit of divine courtroom manipulation. At last, the scales tip. But to the pharaoh's relief, they tip in his favor. Anubis adjusts the weights. Thoth scribbles down the verdict with a flourish of reed pen. The king is true of voice. The assembled assessors nod in agreement. Amit, disappointed, slinks away to await the next unfortunate soul. Osiris rises from his throne with a kindly smile. He steps forward to embrace the newcomer, greeting the pharaoh as one of the blessed dead. The words proclaimed might be something like, "Welcome, O justified one. You have passed the trial. Enter now into the eternal paradise to walk among gods." In some texts, the reward of the justified is to join Osiris's retinue, or to sail the skies with Ra, or to live in the field of reeds, a heavenly mirror of Egypt where crops grow tall, Nile waters are plentiful, and there is no sorrow or pain. The pharaoh might be imagined taking a deep breath, his first breath of new life, and stepping through a doorway of light into forever. In that triumphant moment, all the careful preparations, the embalming, the spells, the treasures, the knowledge, have achieved their purpose. The pharaoh has cheated death in the sense that death has not destroyed him. He lives on, though not on earth, in a form Egyptians considered no less real for being invisible. He has become an Akh, a transfigured spirit, radiant and free. The trials are over. Or are they? In truth, the Egyptians saw the afterlife not as a static heaven, but as an eternal cycle of rebirth, much like the sun rising and setting each day. The pharaoh would continually renew himself, perhaps reenacting these trials in ritual every night, or serving as an advisor to the gods. But from the human perspective, the story reaches its joyful resolution here. The king's tomb was not a dead end, but a gateway to a new existence. The forbidden knowledge and rites worked. Death was not the end for this man. It was a doorway. The pharaoh's eternal legacy. Thousands of years have passed since the last pharaoh's mummy was entombed with golden amulets and guarded by stone jackals. The ancient Egyptians' civilization eventually declined. Tombs were plundered by robbers, empires crumbled, new religions arose that scoffed at the old gods. One might think that in the end, death won after all, that all those elaborate precautions were for naught. After all, the pharaohs did die. Their bodies, even when mummified, are still lifeless husks. Most of their names would be forgotten by history, their rich tomb goods stolen, their monuments eroded by time. Was their quest to cheat death ultimately a failure? It depends on how you measure success. In one sense, no one lives forever. Even the mightiest kings turn to dust eventually, and the world they knew moves on. Yet there is another kind of immortality, one that the Egyptians themselves keenly understood: to be remembered. They believed a person dies twice. First, when the physical life ends. Second, when their name is spoken for the last time. This is why pharaohs were obsessed with inscribing their names on temple walls and obelisks, enclosed in cartouches to signify their royal status, and sponsoring grand statues and stories of their deeds. They were creating a memory that could outlive their flesh. In this, many pharaohs succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, because here we are, still speaking their names in the 21st century. Khufu, Ramesses, Akhenaten, Nefertiti, Tutankhamun. These names have not been lost to the wind. In fact, the modern world has granted them a kind of second life through archaeology, museums, and popular imagination. The treasures of Tutankhamun's tomb, for example, have toured the globe, seen by millions of awestruck visitors. The pharaoh who died as a nearly forgotten minor king has become one of the most famous names on Earth over 3,000 years later. In that sense, Tutankhamun did achieve a form of immortality. Not the literal divine life his priests hoped to secure, but an immortality of memory and cultural presence that persists powerfully today. Consider also those pharaohs who attempted to erase others from history, a tactic known as damnatio memoriae. Hatshepsut, the great female pharaoh, had many of her statues smashed and her name chiseled out by her jealous stepson. Akhenaten, the heretic king, had his images and name obliterated by later pharaohs who loathed his religious revolution. They believed that to wipe out a name was to condemn that spirit to the second death, to be forgotten, and thus truly dead. For a long time, it seemed those efforts worked. Hatshepsut was unknown to us until modern archaeology pieced her story back together, and Akhenaten was little more than an enigmatic footnote in king lists. But truth has a way of resurfacing. Now, Hatshepsut is celebrated as one of Egypt's most successful pharaohs, and Akhenaten is studied as a fascinating innovator. In resurrecting their names, we, in effect, resurrect a piece of their being. The Egyptians might say their souls have been given new life because people remember them again. The forbidden trials the pharaohs underwent tell us as much about human nature as they do about ancient religion. We see a people grappling with the hardest question of all: can we conquer death? Their answer was to ritualize the fight against oblivion. They turned the journey of dying into a grand performance of faith, magic, and engineering. In doing so, they created cultural masterpieces: the pyramids of Giza, the tombs of the Valley of the Kings, the papyrus of Ani with its beautiful Book of the Dead illustrations that have themselves cheated time's erasure. These wonders still stand, or have been reconstructed, allowing us to glimpse the mind of a civilization where death was just another problem to solve. And solve it they did, with a complexity and creativity that still leaves us marveling. Today, we might not share the pharaoh's beliefs, but we can empathize with their desire to defy death's finality. In our own ways, through medicine, through legacy, through memories we leave with loved ones, we too try to cheat death. The Egyptian pharaohs simply took it to an epic scale. And perhaps they teach us that legacy is a form of immortality. The gold and flesh have limits. What endures are the stories, the names, the impact on those who follow. In the cool, dark silence of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, the mummy of a long-ago king rests within its case. Tourists file by, peering at the shrunken visage, the leathery hands crossed over the chest. It's a stark reminder that, yes, even pharaohs die. But in another sense, as long as we are looking at him, as long as we tell his story, he hasn't entirely lost the battle. The forbidden funeral trials were not in vain, for they secured one precious thing: the wonder and remembrance of posterity. So when we next see images of pyramids or think of the Book of the Dead, we are participating in the ancient Egyptians' victory over oblivion. Their pharaohs believed they would live forever, and in a way, they do. In our museums, our history books, our movies, and our imaginations. The tale of how the pharaohs sought to cheat death is more than just a chronicle of rituals. It's a human saga of hope against the inevitable. It reminds us that the fear of death and the yearning for immortality have been with us for all of recorded time. And it challenges us to consider, what do we leave behind when our time comes? The pharaohs left grand monuments and a rich mythology of the afterlife. Perhaps our monuments are smaller, but each of us contributes something to the great human story. In remembering those who came before, we grant them a measure of eternity. If you enjoyed this journey through ancient Egypt's greatest mystery, please give this video a like and consider subscribing for more deep dives into the past. What do you think about the pharaohs' quest to cheat death? Did they succeed? Or is true immortality forever out of reach? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective on this timeless dream of conquering death. And as always, thank you for watching. Until next time, may your heart be light and your legacy endure.